Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Boxing Pulse, joined by Eliud Vasquez-Torres. I'm Chris Guns. Eliud, today we got Ron Katz on the line. What do you know about Ron Katz?
Ron.
Matchmaker Extraordinaire.
That's right. He's one of the better matchmakers in boxing, very well-renowned. I'm pretty sure he has a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, let's get to it then. Don't waste no more time. Let's get him on the line. Mr. Ron Katz, thanks for joining us at the Boxing Pulse. Pleasure having your time.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be with you, too.
I want to say matchmakers are most often not mentioned at all, but your job is maybe the job in boxing that requires the most work and the most duty may be required. Describe the details of the work you do as a matchmaker and what's your duties to make an event go from just like a fleeting thought to becoming the event.
Being a matchmaker is a lot more than just picking up the phone, calling a couple managers and see if their fighters want to fight each other. There's a lot more details that go into it over and above that, such as making airline reservations, getting medicals done for the fighters, things like that people don't realize. A lot of like infrastructure type things. So it's not just, most matchmakers anyway that I know just call up and make a match. There's a ton of work that goes involved. Then you got to stay on top of the guys. For example, I have a show coming up this Saturday in Long Island. So, it's a matter of calling the guys every other day. The weigh-in is coming up, reminding them of what time the weigh-in is, where the weigh-in is, things like that. All the little details that usually go unnoticed that one definitely has to stay on top of.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work,
yeah.
Especially these days.
Yeah, true. And you served as a matchmaker to the game for 35 years now, right? And
that is correct. I'm in my 35th.
Yeah, and that's like an entire career in and of itself. But you did many things before even getting into boxing, didn't you? Tell me about the pre-boxing.
Actually, I got into boxing when I was, I want to say, about 23 years old, somewhere around that age. But yes, I did many things before I got into boxing. Believe it or not, being on the road with the National Touring Company of Godspell, as a company manager, working with KISS for a couple weeks, helping them out after I finished my Godspell thing, DJing in nightclubs, things like that. So, all the fun things a young man likes to do, I did.
Did you like boxing growing up too?
It wasn't my number one sport, to be honest with you. It was probably, way down on the list. I watched the occasional fight, and obviously, Ali Frazier won when that came around. It piqued everybody's interest. But, I was a baseball, hockey kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. And how did you decide to go into the business of boxing, and how to go from just thinking about it to actually getting into it?
Well, there really was never any thought about it, getting into the business, to be honest with you. But what happened was, when I was on the road with Godspell, I was working for the late Lou Falsigno, who was one of the creators of the technology with Barry Bernstein and Mike Mallett for closed circuit TV. He was an engineer by trade. So, long story short, when I came off the road for Godspell, he started doing these closed circuit things, and then he started running live events in our hometown of White Plains, New York. So I was kind of like a jack-off of all trades, and that eventually evolved into what I'm doing now. And that was actually my first entree into the sport, doing a little publicity, a little of this, a little of that. And then I met guys like Johnny Boz and Bruce Trampler, who were my first two mentors, and started getting into the matchmaking sort of thing probably in the late 70s.
And you went to work with the best. Tell me about your meeting Teddy Brenner, legendary matchmaker.
Yeah, listen, I was at top rank as the East Coast matchmaker for 15 years, and for the first few of those years before he became ill, I had the pleasure of going into Manhattan every day from my home in Long Island and sitting next to, the greatest matchmaker of all time. So the education I got from Teddy is what carried me through to where I am today.
And what kind of guy was Teddy?
Teddy was the best. Just one of those old-time Damon Runyon type characters. Great stories, a wealth of knowledge. Would give you the shirt off his back. So charitable. I mean, people thought he was a tough guy, this gruff guy, I mean, when it came to business, Teddy was all business, but, to know and work with him and become friends with him the way I did was something I wouldn't trade it for $1 million. Maybe $1.5 million, but not $1 million.
What did Teddy tell you about his days in the 50s promoting shows in the House of Upsets, a place called Eastern Parkway? What do you
Yeah, well, the one thing Teddy always taught me, the first thing I learned, and I kind of knew this already, and I kind of patterned myself when I was with HBA, Houston Boxing Association, for 4 years prior to Top Rank, and that's how I became noticed because of the amount of shows we were doing and the quality of those events. And once I really got into it, which was then, I kind of, did my research on Teddy. And the one thing Teddy, I patterned myself after Teddy, and that's why they call me Young Teddy. And the one thing Teddy taught me always, and sometimes you can't help it, but was to try not to make a match that you wouldn't want to see yourself. And that one thought always stuck with me through all these years. Now, sometimes it's unavoidable, and there are plenty of matches we make that we don't want to see. But, when you're really going at it and doing it the right way, that's the one thought that always stays in my mind that Teddy taught me.
And Teddy made a lot of those fights that he made from Eastern Parkway, he made into return bouts that were even bigger at the Garden.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was legendary. I mean, Teddy, that's during the golden era of boxing. He was, Teddy didn't take no shit and did things the way he wanted to do them. And that's what, made him a great matchmaker. And I'm privileged and honored when people even compare me to him. I mean, it's a real thrill for me. So, but that's how I've gone about my whole career.
And you knew Teddy probably better than most people ended up knowing him. What were some of those fights that made him proud that he had made, and what did he say
there were
about
too many, man, Chris. There were just too many. I mean, the guy did thousands and thousands and thousands of great fights. I mean, and the stories, because Teddy, being as well known as he was and having the associates he had, went beyond just boxing. I mean, the guy rubbed shoulders with a lot of celebrities. I mean, they used to come into the office. It was great. I mean, Mickey Mantle would walk in, Roger Maris would walk into the office, guys like that, and I'm sitting there going, look at Mickey Mantle. I mean, so that was great. And just the stories and Teddy's own little crew there, the guys with the nicknames Wazzle and this guy and that guy. It's just stuff that you can't make up.
Who were some of his favorite fighters?
Sugar Ray Robinson, for sure. Love Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah. What was the first big fight that you made from the ground up?
Oh, my God, my memory banks, are so bad, I really have to think about it. But probably the one that stands out, well, I mean, and again, my memory ain't what it used to be, so I mean on the dates of them. But, James Toney and Michael Nunn, Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins, fights like that back then were the start for me, and then it just, went on and on and on and on. For the Foreman and more, I had a big part in making that happen. Needling Teddy Atlas every day, because Teddy and I at that time were very, very close to where I finally wore him down and the right deal came on paper, that Bob put together and the fight was made.
And being that you already had success in your life before boxing, what was the difference?
I didn't have really too much success, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I was just a kid, but...
How'd you feel when you had that first humongous event come off? How'd that feel?
Well, it's goosebump, in time, and you feel a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. Elliot, you want to jump in?
Yes. Hi, good, Ron Katz, Ellie Vasquez Torres.
Hello there, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being with us. Yeah, I just want to start, in the beginning of your career as a matchmaker, right away, is it something that you wanted to do, or did it take years to adjust?
No, I mean, like I told Chris, I it was the last thought of my mind. I wanted to be a baseball player. I just wasn't good enough. I tried, but I just wasn't good enough. But, boxing wasn't high priority. I kind of, was thrown into it, luckily, as things turned out. So, I wasn't even that huge of a boxing fan. I like to watch fights now and then. But then once I, immersed myself in it, forget about it. I became obsessed with it. I remember, that started really, excuse me, after the stuff in White Plains. I went to work with Butch Lewis as his matchmaker, with the Spinks brothers, Greg Page. I've got some great pictures where they actually stayed at my mother's house, and then me and Leon became friendly, and we were sort of into the same kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And we used to disappear. Butch used to go wild, things like that. But then I started with HBA, and that's when I really became gung-ho with it, where I would tape every single fight on TV on my VHS, the old 8-track tapes, because we were doing so many shows that I had to start building my knowledge. And again, guys like Johnny Boz were tremendous help to me early on. He kind of took me under his wing, and then it melded from there into Top Rank in 1985, and I had a good run with him through 2000. Then I partnered up with Sugar Ray Leonard for 4.5, 5 years. We were cranking until he jumped ship and went to the Contender, and just tried to survive since then.
Yeah, and which promotion did you work for first? Was it Top Rank or Butch Lewis?
No, Butch was first. Butch was in the early 80s.
And can you describe
and then
how
I
Butch
went with
Lewis was?
HBA after that, with Josephine Abercrombie, Houston Boxing Association.
Okay.
And we had a couple good guys, Frank Tate, Orlando Canizales, a couple decent fighters. But we were doing a ton of shows.
Okay.
And that's
And how
what got...
was Butch Lewis?
Butch, let me tell you something, man. I love, God rest his soul, I love Butch. The best, and I say to this day, the best times I ever had in boxing were with Butch Lewis, but I never made a nickel with him. Not one red cent. But I had a great time for the couple years I was with him. But Butch was terrific. I love Butch.
And do you think that he was misunderstood by a lot of people because maybe of his controversial ways, or?
No, Butch was Butch. And let me tell you, anybody would tell you, outside of, the business area, people would love to hang out with Butch. I mean, the partying we used to do, forget about it. He was so flamboyant. He was great, and he was very smart. He was a shrewd guy. But Butch liked the limelight.
Oh.
But Butch also kept it all for himself. He never let everybody else eat, but he would take you along for the ride.
And what about Sugar Ray? Do you think that he made a mistake going to Contender instead of keeping his promotion going?
That broke my heart, Elio. Because they came and recruited me. I brought him up to ESPN because I've since my days at Top Rank until this day, I've had very, very strong relationships with all the people at ESPN. So I brought him up there. We made the deal. Our company was really cranking. Really cranking at that time. Golden Boy was so distant in our rearview mirror, it wasn't funny. And if you go back and look and read the stories, what I'm telling you is fact, not fiction. But it just came to the point where I don't think Ray didn't want to do as much as he was asked to do, maybe, and his partner Bjorn Rebney and him were not getting along, so he decided to take, I guess, what you would call the easy way out. But that really broke my heart because we had a lot of good fighters, 6, 7 fighters who went on to become world champions, and the company was really cranking.
And how long were you with Top Rank? Was it 15 years
15
or more?
years. Yeah, 1980, the end of 85. I'm sorry, early 86 through the year 2000.
What was
I was responsible for probably 95% of the shows. From like 1989 through like 1999. Wow. Aram, listen, before the internet and all that other shit come about, never fail, 6 a.m. my time, Aaron would call me every single day. You know, what's in the papers, what's in the papers. Those are the good old days when every day there was something about boxing in either the Post, the Times, the Daily News. But, you know, that's yesterday now. We're here today.
And can you tell us what were the more memorable fights that you put together for Top Rank?
Well, like I alluded to before, the first real significant one was James Toney and Michael Dunn. I mean, but there were so many, you know, Vince Phillips, Costa Zoo, Foreman Moore, you know, Durant Barkley fight. I mean, there were, the Leonard Hearns, the final one, the Leonard Durant final one, you know, involvement and all that. It's just too many to even remember. Because, you know, I mean, you know, when you do as many fights as I do, you know, they all start blending into one fight. So it's tough to remember.
Yeah. There was one fight in particular that you did for Top Rank, and it was a fight that involved Butterbean, Evercash, in a fight which he lost. I don't know if you can comment on that fight.
Well, what's the comment? You know, I had him in with Mitch Rose, who was 1-6 or something, whatever at the time. I don't remember what he was. But Mitch had competed in the New York Gloves, but, you know, his career never went anywhere. He was a once-a-year fighter. But for Butterbean, you know, it was like, you know, Rocky Balboa fighting Apollo Creed. He decided to actually train for the fight, and he threw a beating on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, what can I tell you? I mean, you know, listen, Butterbean, you know, 2 or 3 fights up until that point, you know, was lucky to get decisions, you know, so, I mean, listen, hindsight, I wish it never happened because that was the first, you know, I mean, you know, my relationship with Aaron was never the same after that, you know, and I mean, you know, it's a shame, but, you know, he was so in love with Butterbean, you know, but what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I like Bean, too. And Bean even said to Bob, hey, don't blame Ron for this, blame me. I should have let that guy. I mean, he actually stood up for me.
That's cool. That's a cool
But, you know, I didn't even want to make the match. I told Bruce, I said, Bruce, you know, I mean, it was like a setup. I said, stop, you make the match, man. Because, you know, whoever I'm going to get might lick the guy.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it happened. One memorable match, see, as you talk to me, like the memory chips start going off. Murky Sosa, Prince Charles Williams fight.
Oh,
that was probably
Lord.
one of the best matches I ever made for Top Rank, because that's a legendary match that was on ESPN. Just a brutal, brutal match.
Did you do the second one too?
I did them all, yeah. Yeah.
That was...
Second one wasn't as... It was still a good fight. First one was sheer brutality, where we actually had to help a couple women out of... And this is the truth, out of the arena, because it got so savage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because they were both big, strong guys who could punch, and I mean, the shots they were ripping each other with.
Yeah. I wanted to get into the mindset of a matchmaker. You do have to work for someone. If you're with Top Rank, your agenda is to build a Top Rank guy and make Bob Arum happy with the outcome. But it's also, you got to make the fans happy too. How hard is it to balance pleasing all these people with different agendas?
When you're as good as me, it's not hard at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's never has been.
Yeah.
Now, there's more emphasis today on guys winning than there was back in the day. Because there were a lot more avenues, you know, for the guys to fight on, you know, vis-a-vis network TV. But, you know, I mean, you know, I had the reputation and still do, you know, oh, don't let cats do your matches, he'll bump you up, you know, don't let them do, you know, but I built plenty of, you know, at last count over 150 guys throughout most of their careers into world champions.
Yeah.
You know, my philosophy has always been, you know, listen, you got to fight. You know, if you're going to become a world champion and want to stay a world champion, you got to get in there sometime.
Yeah, and you said it yourself. You have to kind of immerse yourself into the sport. I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
You said yourself you have to really be involved in the sport and immerse yourself into it. How much time do you devote to studying boxing and boxers nowadays?
Now, to be honest with you, not nearly as much as I used to. But back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, it was 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, nonstop. I mean, my phone, my wife, threatened divorce on numerous occasions because the phone wouldn't stop ringing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I shut it off, it still found a way to ring.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And there's an old saying that I think matchmakers might be able to understand more than anyone. Styles make fights, don't they?
They usually do, yeah. I've always pondered that statement, though, but when you break it down, I guess, styles do make fights.
Mm-hmm.
But, to me, fighters make fights.
Yeah. And tell me about this. There's ways to make a match that seems and looks even. You got guys with similar skill level and similar points in their careers, and you could still find a way to benefit the fighter you want to win. How do you go about that?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I didn't catch it. You kind of broke up halfway through it.
There's ways to make a match that seems like it's even on paper, similar skill level and similar points in their careers, and you could still manage to give a guy that you want to have the edge. How do you
There's always, how should I say it, maybe underlying things where your fighter is capable of doing something and the other fighter isn't capable to react the proper way to my fighter doing that, which will give my fighter that edge. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of it, and that's the match I made last year with Delvin Rodriguez and Powell Warlock.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, even Delvin being off, moving up in weight, based on the styles and how well I knew Delvin and how well I knew Powell, and Delvin showed it in the rematch. And that's what I expected the first fight, to be honest with you, that Delvin would do certain things that Warlock would have no clue on how to react to those things. Mm-hmm. So that's a little thing you have to look for, that if your fighter can do something that the other fighter isn't going to be able to react to and score effectively because of your fighter doing that, even though on paper, the match looks even, then that's one of the things I look for. But it doesn't always work, especially nowadays, because the quality of fighters is nowhere near what it was, back in the day.
Yeah. Now, back in the day, matchmaking was easier, they said.
Well, I mean, it was easier only because there was a surplus of good, solid fighters. Forget about the elite guys.
Mm.
There were journeymen, what I call journeymen, and that's not a disrespectful term if you know what journeyman means, fighters who would have been easily world champions today.
Yeah. No, definitely. And no matter how much you do for someone, and you did kind of allude to that for the Butterbean fight, but boxing can be a business of what have you done for me lately type stuff. What's the pressure like on a matchmaker? How much?
I mean, listen, the matchmaker, creates his own pressure, hoping guys show, hoping you don't get that call 2 days before the fight saying, oh, my fighter's hurt, things like that. So it's a very intense, pressure-filled job that, you got to have balls of steel to do. You really do. Because, I mean, it all falls on you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the heartbeat of the whole operation.
Yeah. And you being the possible best in the business, give me an example of problems you can have in making a big fight happen. Like today, it's Mayweather and Pacquiao. What would your job be to make that fight happen, even though myself, I lost interest in the fight?
If I was still with Arum, I would march it to his office, which I've done plenty of times in the past, grab him by the collar and say, what the fuck is wrong with you? But that goes back to my previous comment of how things are today. If that was the 90s, the 80s, you would have seen the trilogy already.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I don't have the answer. I don't think anybody has the answer. The match has not been made. And now, in my opinion, although we'd still like to see it, it's like, not who cares, but it's like, God, why couldn't this been done 3 years ago when it really, would have helped the entire sport out and juiced everybody up? Now the guys are getting older, and it's, the guys aren't, what they were, and it's not the same thing, and never will be.
Yeah. Who do you think would win that fight, though, if it was made today?
Today?
Yeah.
I still, and I've always thought that Mayweather would lick him easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. That's why it took some of my care away, you know? They want to make it difficult to make, and I already feel like I know who'd win. What's the point?
But you know what? Aram never gave a crap about, I mean, listen, he always had a rooting interest, and always, especially when Marvin fought Hagler, and then later on George and guys like that. But, Aram was always about the business aspect of it, and make the best match that could be made to generate the most money that could be made. But he ain't like that no more, I mean, that's just a nature of the business, I think, and the sign of the times that we're in right now.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we feuded with King back then, but it wasn't like, the viciousness that it's with Golden Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, on the rare occasion, fights we did with King on a very rare occasion, but like I said, I mean, it's just vicious between the two, between what's going on, between Golden Boy and Top Rank.
What do you think that stems from? Is it because of Oscar's relationship when he was with Bob Arum?
Probably.
What was it like? What was that like?
Listen, for when I was on the scene, and listen, me and Bruce, did a huge recruiting job to bring Oscar to Top Rank because he was about ready to sign with King. Because Arum, only showed mild interest in him at the time when Bob Middleman and Steve Nelson, who were his then managers, kept telling me and Bruce, look, if you guys don't move, we're going to King. But at that time, I mean, Arum, it was like an adopted son.
Yeah.
But, listen, Arum could be, misinterpreted and crotchety in his old age as he's getting older, not his old age, but as he's getting older, and Oscar has his thing going, but, and then you throw Schaefer into the mix, and it becomes ugly.
Yeah, what'd you think?
There's a lot of fights out there that would be really, really good fights that could be made right now that would help the overall sport.
Yeah, like on the same night you had Sergio and Chavez, and De La Hoya decided to put Canelo in the ring with Josecito in the same city on the same night.
Yeah, which is just stupid.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, even if it was successful, which I have my doubts. How successful they actually were with ticket sales.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's just, and you're doing a disservice to your own fighters because the other fight is going to garner the most attention.
Yep.
Where did all the press go?
They went. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the bottom line. Wherever the media goes, then which event is the big event.
You said it, Eliud.
Yeah. Ron, I want to ask you one quick. I want to go back real quick to the Sosa and Williams fight because it's such a memorable fight. I mean, after 7 rounds, it was ruled a draw. I mean, do you think that was the right decision?
Well, actually, yeah. Well, I remember it vividly. Like, some things you just remember. I can remember Dr. Doggett at the time. He walked over to the Williams corner, and he said, "That's enough. There's no way," because Williams was completely busted up. Then the cornerman of Williams, I forgot who it was, might have been Marty Feldman, I think, started yelling at him, "Look at the other guy, look at the other guy." So he walked across the ring and looked at Sosa, who was equally as battered and beaten up. I mean, they were just, Sosa was on the verge of stopping him too.
Mm-hmm.
If it went another round, Sosa would have stopped him. So he looked at both corners. He went to Larry Hazard. Larry called me over. Michael Buffer was looking like, well, what do we do now? He was in his early days. And Larry said, "Look, this is what we're doing." I said, "Okay." And that's what they did. First time and only time that I can remember that a doctor stopped the fight because neither corner could continue from the amount of punches. The doctor was really worried about both guys. And poor Buffer didn't know how to announce it. Larry had to well, come over here. This is what exactly we had to write it out for him what to say.
Wow. And how proud were you when Teddy Brenner was elected to the Hall of Fame back in 1993?
Well, I mean, listen, proud isn't the word. I mean, it was expected, but it wouldn't be a Hall of Fame if he wasn't elected. I mean, the guy was just that good. He was the Babe Ruth of matchmakers.
Right. And speaking of matchmakers, how was your relationship with Bruce Tremblay?
Bruce and I, listen, we know each other 30 years. We're fine. We share a KO card together. We're linked forever. like Gotti and Ward, we're linked forever on a KO boxing card.
Yeah,
so
I actually own
Bruce
that
is
card.
a very unique individual. And I mean, listen, we don't talk that often anymore, but when we are together, it's always a bunch of laughs. So
yeah. And how about when you made the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, I didn't yet.
Elliot, man.
What I'm trying to say is that you should make the Hall of Fame. I mean,
well, then why didn't you say that? Like, what's up with that, Elliot? I think there are reasons which we'll not go into. Mainly Ed Brophy, but we won't go into it. Why I haven't been on the ballot, but there are certain individuals who will go unnamed who are making the big push.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think that you should be. I mean, to me, you are in the Hall of Fame.
Well, listen, I appreciate that. And I'm not patting myself on the back because if you know me, I mean, early on, I was the most difficult guy to deal with because all of a sudden I was in this power position. It went to my head, and I try to tell guys now, like Brad Goodman, who was attached to my hip as a kid. I took him under my wing. And took care of him, and now, trying to tell guys like that, don't be like I was, because I was hated for many years. Hated. Because I was an asshole. You know what I'm saying? Because I was so powerful, and I let it go to my head, because, here am I, a kid off the streets of White Plains, and now I'm one of the in Ring Magazine for God knows how many years in a row, one of the top 5 power guys in boxing during the period of, 1987 to 1996. So, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that, if I was in any other sport, for the things I've done, for the amount of years I've done and maintained what I feel, even though maybe not the quality of fighter, but the excellence of fights that I've made, I'd be in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. But, that's another story. It'd be nice, but what can I tell you?
I'm sorry to jump in, Elliot, but what humbled you, Mr. Katz?
You really want to know?
Please, if you want to share.
A couple unsavory characters saying, you better change your fucking attitude or else. This happened in, I want to say, the early 90s.
Okay. Enough said.
Sometimes you get to the point where, you can say things to whoever you want to say things to, and you feel there will be no repercussions.
Yeah.
Well, thank God I knew people, because there were no repercussions, but it made me think like, hey, man, I can't do this anymore. I can't talk to people like this anymore.
Yeah. Elliot, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. You're now with Star Boxing, matchmaking for them. How is that?
How is that? It's all right, and that's all I'm saying.
I know it's not like, top rank or, or maybe even Butchery, but what are the fighters that you're actually matchmaking today?
Well, the best guy on our roster is, is Demetrius Andrade, but again, it's the problem when you're with a mid-level promoter that, sometimes the investment is so great in one fighter that, they're overly cautious to turn the fighter loose. And, a guy like Demetrius could be and might be one of the most talented guys around. But if you don't turn him loose, you're never going to know.
I talked to him.
Turn him loose, and he is what you think he is because of his pedigree and how he's matured, then you can have a superstar on your hands. But you got to, Joe Hanks is another one. He's a good, talented heavyweight. But, you can't be afraid to fight guys. You have to turn them loose a little because you're only going to get better, and if you fight the better guys and you win, and you're obviously going to be going on to bigger and better things.
And do you feel that Bobo Andretti is like protected? Is that what you're saying, or something?
I'm not
like that?
saying he's protected, but I'm saying that there should be more of a willingness on everybody's part to put him in more meaningful matches. You know, he's fought some decent guys, but for his skill level, in my opinion, and what he's accomplished as an amateur, he should already be there where a lot of guys are, like guys like Lara and guys like that. You know, Ricky Vial and guys like that. Because he has as much pedigree as those guys.
Yeah. He seems like a good kid, but there's some fighters who are hard to deal with. Some are prima donnas in some way. But what kind of problems do you encounter with such fighters like that? And
not many, you know, and I haven't over the years. You know, the fighters, to me, for the most part, are pretty cool guys. I mean, you know, the managers can be a pain in the ass, and once in a while you run into, you know, little issues like, why am I staying in a double room? Why don't I have a suite? You know, those kind of things. But you know, not too much, because I don't tolerate it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. What goes through your mind when you're trying to put a card together? You get your marching orders to make a fight. What's the first thing that you do?
First and foremost, you know, okay, where are we doing the fight? You know, what can I put on this show that's going to be attractive enough to the population in that area that's going to make them want to buy tickets? Then, okay, here's my main event, Chris Algieri. Who can I put him with that's going to make a good enough fight where he's going to win and the people are going to be happy that paid $100 to see him? And then just move right on down the line for the undercard. And that's really, you know, how I go about putting the show together.
And there's different kinds of fights to be made, too. Sometimes you're trying to make a fight where the most valuable fighter gets a win, or you're trying to make a great fight. What one is the...
Exactly, especially, you know, in you know, I mean, we do a lot of off-television shows, dark shows. We do a lot on TV, also on ESPN, obviously, and other networks. But in these dark shows, you know, the heartbeat of those dark shows are the local kids that are going to sell tickets. So it becomes a very difficult thing because, you know, a lot of them may not be as talented as some of the other guys, you know, that you could use on the show. You want them to win so that the next time you use them, you know, instead of selling 75 tickets, maybe he'll sell 125 tickets. But you also want him to be in a competitive enough fight, you know, where his people who are paying money to see him fight and naturally want him to win are juiced a little.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do that for many, many years. You know, once in a while you'll get clunkers. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's unavoidable. Like I said, there's plenty of fights out there that I've made that, you know, I wanted to go in the back and puke after, so.
Yeah. I'm sure you have a lot of fights that you feel good about, but would you rather make the fights where you need a guy to win, or would you rather make a very good competitive fight that you don't know who's going to win? Which one gives you the most fulfillment?
Part B.
Yeah. Just making the
Not
good
even
fight.
thinking about it.
Yeah. And
that's my pedigree.
Yeah. And did you ever make...
That comes from Teddy and the other guys I mentioned, Bruce, Johnny, guys like that.
Yeah, you mentioned before about the Butterbean and Mitchell Rose. What other fights did you have where a guy that you wanted to win didn't?
Oh boy, again, you want to tap into my memory banks here. I'm going to have to think. The one fight right off the bat that I thought he was going to win, and I was shocked he didn't, because the other guy showed up like he was, 25 years old again, was Duran and Barkley.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
But on the flip side, and this is right before I joined Top Rank, when we did Barkley with Hearns, I told Aram, I said, Hearns is getting knocked out. And he said, you're out of your fucking mind. What do you know? You're crazy. I said, all right, you'll see. We all made money on that fight. Good money on that fight.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm sure it's the euphoria that you feel when something surpasses expectations. But how about the opposite?
Oh yeah, I mean there's no feeling like it.
Yeah. Did you ever, the opposite I'm wondering about, have you ever made a fight where a fighter actually died? It must make you feel as low as you
I've had a couple close calls, and I've been doing this, for like maybe the last 30 years. I say a little prayer before every one of my shows for protection of the fighters. That's just between me and the guy upstairs. So.
Did you always do that, or?
Had a couple close calls.
Yeah.
But never, thank God, anybody who's passed in the ring.
Yeah, thank God.
I thought was definitely going to go, but he ended up making a Russian kid.
Yeah.
Some years back.
What's a small list of the fights that you're most proud of that you made? Small list. I know it's asking you.
The one I always point back to, because that that got a lot of notoriety, was James Toney and Michael Nunn. I mean, the Sosa Williams fight. The Foreman Moore fight. God, there's just been so many. It's tough to think. It really is. It's hard to remember, because if I talk to guys, they'll say, "Well, what about that fight you made?" And I said, "Oh shit, I forgot about it."
Yeah, it's
I mean, when you do so many fights and you get older, it's tough to remember. It really is.
I hear you, and you got such a long history too. But I'll never forget that George Foreman knocking out Michael Moore fight. But what was it like at Top Rank when that happened?
Oh my God! Because we were sitting there, and like with our hands, our chin in our palms, because Moore was toying with them, and then like boom, and it was like 4th of July. Forget about it.
Yeah, amazing moment. Amazing.
It really was. It really was.
What are your favorite fighters to make a match for?
Well, I always loved making fights for James Toney, because he never said no to anybody I proposed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are a lot of other guys like that, but James was one of them.
Who's your least favorite, or you might not want to answer that?
And I like making matches for Delvin Rodriguez. He's the same way. He says, "I don't care who, just tell me where, when, and how much."
Yeah, just.
I don't really have any least favorite guys that I want to make matches for. I mean, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm. And
that I can think off the top of my head.
Who's your favorite fighters of all time? A small list.
Sugar Ray Leonard, believe it or not. I mean, I love Ray. I love Duran. Early Duran, vintage Duran. Then older fighters, obviously Sugar Ray Robinson, Barney Ross, Benny Leonard, Henry Armstrong, guys like that. Love them.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about your top 5 today?
Today?
Yeah.
My favorite fighters?
Yeah. You don't even have to work with them. Your favorite fighters to watch.
Who are my favorite fighters to watch today? That's a very good question, because I haven't really given that question much thought, but let me think about that for 1 second. Who are my favorite fighters? I like watching Mayweather, because I also had a hand in bringing him to Top Rank, and always thought that he was going to be a pretty good fighter, and he turned out to be probably the best of his era. I like watching Sergio Martinez. I like Juan Manuel Marquez. Watching guys like that fight. Pacquiao, obviously. And whoever else. I'll.
And how great is Floyd?
It is. I'll watch.
How great is Floyd all time? Where would you put him?
All time?
Yeah.
Probably top 20.
Mm-hmm.
Top 15, maybe.
Some people are getting a little carried away, I think, putting him at number 2 or 3. Some people even put him at 1.
Yeah, because, you got to remember the big difference between now and even going back before my time was, the amount of great fighters there were at each weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's maybe 1, 2, 3, back then, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, there may have been 10, 15 guys.
Yeah.
You know, and if, you know, that's why, you know, I'm not really one into the pound for pound mythical kind of stuff or that, but, you know, if, you know, people always say, well, look at today's athlete is stronger, has more things available to him. I said, okay, well, if you want to make a correct argument, then make those things available to the fighters back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an equal playing field, and then tell me that this guy would lick that guy. Plus the trainers. There are no good trainers around today. You can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
You know, where back then, you know, you had, you know, hundreds of guys that were, you know, world-class trainers and teachers.
Yep. And that's,
you know, today the word defense doesn't exist in our sport because there's nobody really to teach it.
You're absolutely right. And that was
Watch fights. Watch how many guys actually move their head.
Oh, I know. Or faint. No one faints no more.
It's a lost art because, you know, there's, you know, a few trainers that I respect, like Freddie and Robert Garcia, Emmanuel naturally, you know, Ronnie Shields. You know, there's a few guys, you know, those are old school guys.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, for the most part, you know, these guys just, you know, Virgil Hunter's a very good trainer. He actually teaches his guys defense.
Yeah.
You know, defense is a very important part of the game.
Yep.
You could be a great offensive fighter if you don't have defense, you know. You got to be damn lucky to get to the top.
Yep. And my next question was, give me a list of the best trainers, and you already did that, so thank you. And
yeah, well, I'm talking about now, but, you know, back then, you know, when I first broke into shit, guys like Ray Arcel, Freddie Brown were still around. You know, Al Braverman was a hell of a trainer, guys like that.
Bill Miller.
But Gil Clancy, guys like that, were, you know, I mean, those were great trainers. Eddie Futch.
Yeah. They don't come like them no more. Totally.
No, I mean, unfortunately, you know, and you know, there are very few students of those kind of guys. You know, Bill Miller, who trained James Toney, was an unbelievable trainer. You know, he gave me such an education on how to train fighters.
Yeah.
You know, because I spent so much time with him. But, you know, again, you know, Freddie is a disciple of Futch, but there aren't guys, you know, enough guys who are disciples of, like, the Freddie Roaches and the Virgil Hunters and the Ronnie Shields, you know, kind of guys around today that can impart their wisdom, you know, to the next generation.
Yeah. What happened to
There's a huge gap there because, you know, it's sad because guys can't fight no more.
I know. I don't know what happened to
Watch even the best fighters, and you watch them throw punches and how they just lay out there.
Yep.
And yet the other fighter doesn't take advantage of it. Guys do not move, and that's my biggest bugaboo. Guys do not move their head anymore. Now, I'm not talking about sliding with your shoulders and ducking and jiving. I'm just talking a simple, basic defensive maneuver. Move your head. Punch, move your head to the side.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
Move your head out of the way of a punch. Things like that. Guys throw, you know, get so offensive crazy, and they just leave it out there.
Yep. It's amazing, but
it really is.
Yeah. And just give me a couple. I know Andrade's one of them, but who's some other young fighters that you have that you think can achieve greatness?
I really, and he fought for me early on in his career. If he keeps his head on right, I really, really like Adrian Bronner a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he, you know, as long as he keeps his own identity and tries not to be something that he isn't, I think he's got all the talent in the world, and he's got a lot of charisma, and that's what you need in this business. You know, talent will only take you so far. You need that charisma to become, you know, the superstar like a Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah,
I really like Bronner a lot.
I love Bronner, but I think he's fighting way too many smaller guys, and that weight issue was almost unforgivable.
What he did was inexcusable.
Yeah.
Was a disgrace.
Yeah.
I'm just talking purely from a talent and charismatic level.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, you know, I mean, even a smaller guy, a guy like Abner Maris, you know, I like guys like, you know, there's a few out there.
Yep. And what do you think about the game and the strength and conditioning coaches being used and a lot of guys testing positive for PEDs?
Well, I mean, listen, that's prevalent in every sport. You know, just guys get caught. Some guys do, some guys don't.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything you could do about it?
I don't know what to say on the matter because I'm not an expert on the matter, and the effect they actually have and how beneficial they may be. I think in a sport like baseball where there's a long-term, a long season and a lot of games, that it probably benefits you far greater than, one fight. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But listen, again, I'm not an expert. I could be wrong on that. But, I mean, it's just crazy how so many of these guys and so many, I guess, of these things they're taking, which they think, are okay, are not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to start knowing what's going in their body more, taking more.
Yeah, I guess, maybe somebody should sit down and actually educate the fighters, the managers, people in the business. Look, this is good, this is not good. I know you got this at GNC, but this contains certain things, and this is going to turn up as a positive test.
Yep.
I know you're drinking tea where there's cannabis pellets in it, and you think it's all right. It's going to turn up a positive test, Julio.
Totally right.
So one has to know, what's right and what's wrong.
Yep. Elliot.
I guess in a perfect world, if everybody, just, was clean and did natural things, then there'd be no issues.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Ron, I got a question. Do you think that championship belts should be reduced to one per division for elite matches can be made?
Say that again?
Do you think that every division of boxing should be reduced to one championship belt for, elite matches can be made?
Yeah, but that's never going to happen. You got far too many organizations, far too much money floating out there. From a purist standpoint, of course. But it'll never happen. And that's why nobody gives a shit about being a champion anymore, and the public doesn't give a crap about championship fights anymore, because there's 9 champions per division.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look at someone like Floyd Mayweather who fights once a year, once every 16 months. Where will the contenders go when they're sitting?
Of course, that's another thing.
Just don't fight enough.
But again, that's just the nature of how our business is now. I think the business is pretty strong, actually, because, there's numerous networks like Wealth TV that are epics, that are, these secondary networks that are televising, decent fights. Besides, the ESPNs, the Telefuturas, obviously the premiums, and the Fox Sports nets. So, that's great that there's a lot of activity out there. What would be sensational is if we can ever get back on network TV. But you got to have the talent. You got to have guys who the casual fan is going to show interest in.
True.
That's how, guys like Ray Leonard, and those guys became so big because, they came out of the Olympics. There was such hoopla. People saw them, and the casual fan who is only going to watch Ray Leonard fight tuned in to see Ray Leonard fight.
Mm-hmm. And the poor kids got a chance to sit at home and see great fighters. Now you have to be somewhat affluent at least to even see these
no doubt. And now the problem is, a lot of the Caucasian guys are going into MMA because it's, in my opinion, a lot easier. As from a not that it's an easier sport, but fundamentally, it's a lot easier to become an MMA fighter than a boxer. Because a boxer takes unbelievable amount of technique.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, there was a plethora of Caucasian fighters, plethora of African American fighters, and they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s and 80s, you had fighters coming out of the Olympics like Sugar Ray, the Sphinx Brothers, you had Pernell Whitaker, Holyfield, and a few others who made a name in the Olympics, winning medals, gold medals mostly. You don't see that nowadays. What do you think is the decline of the Olympic boxing?
Well, it's because of our overall amateur program. That's why. It's gone to shit. And I was told in confidence after the fact that these kids that went to these Olympics had 2 weeks to train for the Olympics. It was in such disarray, and the coach, was replaced. And they brought these guys in at the last minute, and the guys they brought in couldn't work the corners. How do you expect them to win? And it trickles down right to the Metros, to the local Golden Gloves. I say bring back smokers, like the old days. Let these kids get a little experience before they go into the Golden Gloves. They don't let them do it anymore. Back in the day, in the New York Golden Gloves would be upstairs at Madison Square Garden, putting 20,000 people in there. And the kids that were fighting in there already had 30, 40 amateur fights because they were fighting in smokers every week. Now you see guys winning New York Golden Gloves with 7, 8 amateur fights. Come on, please. You may get one exception, one out of a thousand that is special because he's been given God-given talent. But what about the other 999? What are you going to do with them?
And I want to go back to early in your career, Mike Tyson. I know you did a lot of his early fights.
I did 17 Mike Tyson fights, from his 6th fight right up until the Berbick fight. The last fight we did was Marvis Frazier.
And were you excited to watch a Mike Tyson fight and actually make the fight? Because
I loved every second of it, and I loved being around Mike every second of the run. It was great. It was very special. You knew you were rolling with somebody very special, who was going to have an everlasting mark on the sport. Unfortunately, he made a left when he should have made a right, and that kind of killed everything.
And how was your relationship with Mike in those days?
Oh, sensational. To this day. He sees me, he'll give me a big bear hug. My wife, he'll kill me. He would take a bullet for my wife. We spent a lot of time with him. One of his pet peeves is we always, after the weigh-ins, can we go get an ice cream now? Like a little kid. Every show, we would take him for an ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you know that, or even think that he was going to become the next great heavyweight?
The first time I saw him, and the first time I had to go into a dressing room and convince his opponent to actually come out and fight.
Oh, wow.
How do you think Mike would
that
do
happened
against...
more than once, let me tell you.
How do you think young Mike Tyson would do against someone like Vitaly Klitschko or the big guys of today?
Knock him dead. Mike Tyson could have been probably the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If he stayed the course, if Jacobs didn't die, I mean, a lot of ifs.
Mm-hmm.
He was that good.
I never saw
anybody. He was that fast, and he was getting better.
Yep. I never saw anybody who it's such a shame with what he was born with and what he got out of it, I guess.
Yep. I mean, listen, the intimidation factor alone that he brought with him, would win him the fight before he even stepped into the ring.
Yep. Did you see his show? The show he got on there?
No, I didn't actually.
Didn't. Go on, Elliot.
Yeah, how were you scared or worried for Marvin Frazier after Tyson totally destroyed him in 30 seconds?
No, I wasn't scared because I knew what was going to happen. Guys who get knocked out like that, you don't get scared of. It's the guys that hang around and take the beat, like Jesse Ferguson. Those guys you start getting a little worried about because they're just too game for their own good. But Marvis, I knew, and listen, I spent 4 days with Joe, because Joe was great and I had a good relationship with Joe, and he was so convinced the kid was going to win. So how do you tell the great Joe Frazier, Joe, don't blink your eyes because it ain't going past one round?
Yeah. Well, I guess you just let him see for himself.
Yeah.
I want to thank you.
No, listen, Joe was Joe in old school. Hey, let the boy fight.
Mm-hmm.
Wins, he wins. If he don't, tomorrow the sun will come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Appreciate your
My
time.
pleasure. I'll see you guys on Twitter.
You got it.
For your time, Ron.
My pleasure. Great talking to you.
Take it easy.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Legendary matchmaker Ron Katz, Elliot. Great guy. Great conversation.
Yeah, he's a great guy, good conversation, a lot of history. There's so much to talk about him. Just this segment isn't enough time. And I also want to address a little blunder that I did. I told him how was it when he made the Hall of Fame. To me, he's in the Hall of Fame. That's what I meant to say it. But, I didn't say it in those words. But if anybody heard that earlier, that was a little blunder I did. But, hey, what can you say? You're talking to Ron Katz, who should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think you might need to get your own Hall of Fame going. He's in the Eliud Hall of Fame. And that's damn good enough.
But I should have asked him if he's in any Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure he's in a Hall of Fame somewhere. I mean, there's the International Boxing Hall of Fame. There's a New York Hall of Fame. There's a LA Hall of Fame.
He's in a Hall of Fame somewhere.
Yeah, he's probably in a few of them, or maybe he should be in all of them. There's actually now going to be a Las Vegas Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, he learned right from the greatest matchmaker of all time, Teddy Brenner. So, I think one day he will be. So, no sweating there. Maybe you're just being a psychic. You know what the
He's already in my Hall of Fame, so I'm just kidding.
That's it. And I want to thank you, Eliud. Great interview. I want to thank Mr. Katz, Ron Katz. Great conversation, and we will keep in touch.